Hey, what's up everybody? Ben here from blogwithben.com, and in today's tutorial I'm going to walk you through the process of designing a compelling, eye-catching YouTube thumbnail using AI. We all know that one of the essential ingredients to a successful YouTube channel is attractive thumbnails. A powerful thumbnail can significantly boost your video's click-through rate, thus driving more views and subscribers to your channel. So today you're going to learn how to design a super attractive YouTube thumbnail using AI, specifically Adobe Firefly and the new Photoshop Beta. By leveraging AI to create your YouTube thumbnails, you'll save a ton of time and money in the process, plus it's a lot of fun. Now, real quick before we get started, if you get any value from this tutorial, I would greatly appreciate it if you would like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Blog with Ben YouTube channel. Doing so helps me keep this channel going and growing, and it also allows you to stay up to date with all of the AI and WordPress trends that are happening throughout the year. But as always, thank you so much for all your support. All right, with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be using Adobe Firefly Beta and Photoshop Beta to create and design AI-generated images that we'll use in the thumbnail. And if you're brand new to these tools, then this section of the video will briefly go over them and show you how to gain access to each one. However, if you already have access, feel free to skip ahead to the next section of the tutorial. Alright, first we have Adobe Firefly. This is a new family of creative generative AI models focusing initially on image and text effect generation. And in this video, we'll be using their text to image generation. This free and exciting AI technology offers new ways to create while significantly improving your workflows. Now, Adobe Firefly is currently in beta, but you can access their web client for free by visiting firefly.adobe.com, which I've linked to in the video description below, and that will bring you to the page that you're looking at right now. Then in order to actually use Firefly, you'll need a free Adobe account. So to get started, click on the sign in button in the upper right corner of the screen. And this will take you to the sign in page, but if you're a brand new user, you'll need to create a new account. So go ahead and click the create an account link. And then it's pretty straightforward. You could sign up using an Apple, Google, or Facebook account, or you can enter an email address, create a password, and click the continue button. Both will allow you to create a free Adobe account. Then not shown here, Adobe will send you a confirmation email to the email address that you signed up with, and all you'll do is click on that link in the email to confirm your account. And then once your account is confirmed, you can access the Adobe Firefly Beta and Adobe Creative Cloud desktop app. And speaking of Creative Cloud, if you plan on using Photoshop Beta, you'll need to download Creative Cloud to your desktop. This is free as well, but you'll need to purchase a subscription to Photoshop in order to use the new beta version, which I believe runs about $20 per month, but you could try it out for free for 7 days. Either way, the Creative Cloud app is still free, and you can download it here at this page, which I've linked to in the video description below. And to get started, click the Download Creative Cloud button. This will download the installer to your computer, which is not shown here, but all you'll do is open and launch the installer, where you'll follow a few simple prompts to set up the Creative Cloud app on your computer. It's pretty straightforward, but if you have any issues, feel free to reach out in the comments and I'd be more than happy to help you out. Then once the Creative Cloud app has been installed, you may have to sign in with your Adobe ID and password, but it'll look like this. Creative Cloud provides apps, web services, and resources for all of your creative projects. And for this tutorial in particular, it's where you can subscribe to Photoshop Beta. You can try it out for 7 days for free, but just visit the beta section here and you could sign up for a subscription to gain access. Okay, so those are the tools we're going to use in this video. If you have any trouble getting started, as I said, feel free to reach out in the comments and I'd be more than happy to assist you in any way that I can. All right, with that being said, let's use AI to create some images for our thumbnail. Okay, now the fun begins. Now we're going to experiment with Adobe Firefly AI and Photoshop Beta to create some really cool images that will be used in the YouTube thumbnail. For this particular example, I'm going to create a thumbnail for a YouTube tutorial about how to start a food blog with AI. As you can see, I'll be using an image of myself within the thumbnail that I captured with my cell phone, but we'll be able to edit and touch it up in ways that used to be impossible by using Photoshop Beta's new AI features. Plus, we'll also be using Adobe Firefly to create additional imagery within the thumbnail to help tell our story, like the flowing, colorful background and this little robot with the chef's hat on. The great thing about these images is that they are 100% unique, meaning that no one else will have them. Plus, since these are one-of-a-kind AI-generated images, they'll help the thumbnail stand out and potentially increase your click-through rate. Another huge benefit to using AI-generated images is that instead of scrolling endlessly on stock photo sites looking for images that could possibly work for your thumbnail, you can harness the power of AI and literally create whatever you want in a matter of seconds. This is not only fun, but it'll save you a ton of time, trust me. Okay, first things first, head over to the Adobe Firefly website if you aren't there already. And really quick before we get started, they have an awesome Discord server that I highly recommend joining. You can gain access here by clicking the Join the Discord button in the upper right corner of the screen. This is a great place to connect, learn, and collaborate with other users and Adobe professionals. I've learned a ton here, and they're always hosting live events where they stream and walk you through different use cases with Firefly. It's just a great place to learn and take your skills to a new level. It's free too, so sign up for a Discord account if you don't have one and join the Adobe Firefly server. Okay, back at Firefly, let's start creating. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we're going to create our images using the text-to-image feature. Should be the first one listed there, so go ahead and click the Generate button. And this will bring you to the prompt generation page. At least that's what I like to call it. And this is not only where you'll enter your text prompt, but it's where you can explore other AI-generated images and their prompts to see what other people are creating with Firefly. And when you have some extra time, feel free to explore these images and test out their prompts by clicking on any of these images listed here. But right now, let's create some images for our thumbnail. So to use Firefly, the idea is that you'll just describe your image in text form within the field provided, and the AI will go to work. We could literally do a whole video on prompts and the strategy behind them, but I recommend that you keep your prompts somewhat short and try to be as descriptive as possible and use keywords. For example, the first image I'm going to create is a background for the thumbnail. So my prompt will be smooth gradient high-tech background, movement and flow, texture and layers. You'll notice that I'm just typing some words with commas. You don't really need to worry about grammar when writing your prompts, but they do need to be spelled correctly, and they have to be in English for now. Feel free to experiment with different prompts that include styles, particular artists, colors, etc. But once you've entered your prompt, click the Generate button, and the AI will begin designing. It typically takes less than 60 seconds for the images to appear, but when they're ready, Firefly will give you 4 variations of the text prompt you entered. How cool is that? Now, one thing I love about Adobe Firefly is its user interface. This is probably the most user-friendly AI image generative tool I've used so far, and the reason I say that is due to the editing features you have here on the right-hand side of the screen. After Firefly generates the image, you can get even more creative by changing the aspect ratio, content type, styles, color and tone, lighting, and composition, all from this little sidebar menu. And let me show you what I mean. So by default, Firefly will create images using the 1:1 aspect ratio, which gives you this square-shaped image. However, you can change that in the aspect ratio drop-down. Just click on it, and this opens the other aspect ratio options where you can quickly change the dimensions of your image. And since this is for a YouTube thumbnail, I recommend using the 16:9 aspect ratio. So I'll select that by checking the box and give it a few seconds to regenerate. And voila, the shape of the image changes from a square to a rectangle and is much better suited for a YouTube thumbnail. Next, let's take a look at the content type. So the AI automatically used the art content type in this generation. As you can see, it's already selected and added. You'll also see that the various content types and styles are added below the description where you can remove them and regenerate the image if you'd like. But I want to change the content type to show you what it does to the image. So instead of art, let's select photo. And when I do, Firefly automatically regenerates the images in order to use the new content type. So just sit tight really quick while the AI does its thing and check that out. We get a similar yet different variation of the image due to the new content type. Really cool. Then let's keep going and change the content type to graphic. And for the sake of time, I'm going to speed through the regeneration part. And there's our prompt using the graphic content type. Pretty cool. Then let's check out none. And we'll speed through the regeneration. And there we have the new variations of that prompt. Now, the background image prompt may not be the best example for showcasing the different content types because they all look pretty similar, but as you begin creating images, I recommend experimenting with different content types to see how it affects your prompts. I think you'll be pretty impressed with the results. And speaking of that, I also recommend experimenting with different styles, colors and tones, lighting, and composition. As you can see, you have a ton of creative control over the images after they've been generated here within the sidebar. Feel free to play around and see how these alter your images, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on with one of these. Alright, so if you click on any of the images, you could take a closer look at it and cycle through the larger versions of the other images as well. Again, just another cool feature to let you review and inspect what the AI created. Okay, so I really like this one. So once you decide on what you want to use, you can download it and save it to your computer by clicking this little download icon in the upper right corner of the image. Then before the download takes place, you'll get a pop-up from Adobe in regards to their transparency and AI. This is basically telling you that after you download the image, the content credentials will be included, letting people know that it was generated using AI. This is a great step towards ethics when designing with AI, and I like that they're doing this. Either way, read through it when you have some extra time and click the continue button to begin the download. Now, one thing I want to point out before we move on to Photoshop is that all the images created with Adobe Firefly Beta are not for commercial use for the time being. So that's why all of the images you download from here will have this watermark in the bottom corner stating that it's not for commercial use. Now, we're going to remove it in this tutorial, but I want to make that clear. As of June 2023, these images should not be used for commercial use. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the next image I want to create for this thumbnail. So for this particular example, as you know, I'm creating a thumbnail for a YouTube tutorial about how to start a food blog with AI. And in addition to the flowing background, the other image I want to generate is a little robot with a chef's hat on. I thought it was a cool little play on the idea of AI being a chef while also helping you start a blog. So just like the background, in order to generate this new image with AI, within the prompt field at the bottom of the screen, enter what you want to see. And this time I want to create a kind, happy, futuristic robot, white in color with blue lit eyes, wearing a chef's hat, sitting at a desk, typing on a laptop computer. Now, this prompt is getting creative and super specific, but as you'll see in a few moments, the AI is pretty efficient in generating what you're thinking of in your prompt. So let's go ahead and click the generate button and see what it comes up with. And again, for the sake of time, I'm going to speed through the image generation, but it typically takes about 30 seconds or so for brand new images to generate. Okay, those are hilarious and pretty much what I had in mind. Amazing. Now, you could play around with the different configurations here, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to use one of these images. And I like this one the best. And don't worry about things being out of frame or odd shapes in the image. We can adjust all of that in Photoshop Beta. It really is amazing what you can do now with AI. Okay, so I like this guy. He'll work for what I'm trying to accomplish in this thumbnail. So let's download it really quick. So click the download icon in the upper right corner of the image. And then that's going to do it for the AI generated imagery that will be used in this thumbnail. Feel free to keep playing with Firefly if you need additional assets for your thumbnail, but for this example, I only need the background and a graphic of the robot. Alright, moving on. Next, let's put these images in our thumbnail and get even more creative with Photoshop Beta and the new amazing Generative Fill. In this portion of the tutorial, we're going to use the new Photoshop Beta Generative Fill to go even further with our thumbnail design. And if you recall at the beginning of the tutorial, we went over how to download Photoshop Beta. You'll need an Adobe account and the Creative Cloud app downloaded on your computer. Then you'll be able to access and subscribe to Photoshop, which is what you're looking at right now. Then once you have the app open, from here, let's create a new file. So click the New File button. Then there may be some debate over what size to make your thumbnail, but from my personal experience, I've had more success when using the dimensions 1920 by 1080 pixels for my YouTube thumbnails. Now, most people say to use 1280 by 720, but for this example, I'm going with 1920 by 1080. Then you can ignore the resolution PPI. It's currently set to 500, but since we'll be exporting this image from Photoshop, the resolution setting will be ignored. So you can use whatever you want here. Okay, now that our dimensions are set, click the Create button, and this will take you to your blank canvas. By default, Photoshop will start you off with a blank background layer filled with the color white, but I'm going to create a new layer using the background image we created with Adobe Firefly. So to import that image, simply click the Import button towards the bottom of the canvas and find the image you want to use. And there we go, I like that one, so I'll select it. Then you'll notice that the 16:9 aspect ratio of the Adobe Firefly image doesn't quite fit the canvas in Photoshop, so you can drag the corners of the image to transform it and ensure that it covers the entire background. And there we go. Then click that little check mark to confirm the new size and set it in place. Perfect. Next, you'll probably also notice the Adobe watermark in the bottom left corner of the image. If you recall, these images aren't for commercial use, so as of now, Adobe will put this little notice on all images created and downloaded from Adobe Firefly. However, for this tutorial, I want to remove it, and one way to do that is with the Generative Fill feature. So anytime you want to use the generative tool, you'll need to select the area that you want to edit, and one way to do that is with the rectangular marquee tool. You could select it here from the toolbar or click M on your keyboard for the shortcut. Either way, once you have the marquee tool activated, you'll simply use it to select the area that you want to edit like so. Then the Generative Fill toolbar will appear near the selected area. And from here you have additional settings and tools to choose from, but for this tutorial, we're just using the Generative Fill tool, which is selected by default. So go ahead and click where it says Generative Fill, and then you'll be presented with a text box where you can enter what you want the AI to generate. But if you want to just remove something, leave it blank and click the Generate button. Then the AI goes to work and you'll be presented with a progress bar letting you know how much longer it is before the task is complete. Usually takes 30 seconds, so just sit tight really quick. But for the sake of time, I'm going to speed through this and boom. Just like that, the Generative Fill AI has removed the watermark and replaced it with what it feels is the best fit for the image. Amazing stuff. Now, anytime you use the Generative Fill within Photoshop Beta, it creates a new layer as well and gives you 3 variations that you could review within the Properties tab. So let's review these variations really quick, and you could use the Properties tab or you can click these arrows to cycle through each one. As you can see, we have 3 to choose from, and clicking that arrow, you can get a better look at each one and see how it looks with the rest of the image. And I think I like that one. There we go. All right, next I'm going to add some images to this thumbnail. The first being a picture of myself. So to add a new image, I'll open my Finder and search for the image I want to use, and then click on it and drag and drop it over to the layer within Photoshop. And I should point out that I shot this photo with my iPhone during the morning in my home office. I also used the front-facing camera, which has a lower resolution, meaning it's much lower quality. However, the reason I did this was that I wanted to show you that you don't need a fancy camera or studio lighting to create professional looking photos for your thumbnail. As you'll see in this tutorial, you can do some pretty cool touch-ups to your images with Photoshop Beta's AI. Okay, so let's confirm that we want to use this image and add it to our layer panel. So click the little checkmark button. Then the next thing I want to do is remove the background. So check this out. Click that new and improved Remove Background button within the toolbar below the image. And boom, background is gone. Now, depending on your image, you may need to do some additional erasing with your eraser around the edges, which I'm going to do right now. I see a few areas around my head that need some additional erasing. So access your eraser within the toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen. It'll look like this. You can also click E on your keyboard for the shortcut to access it. Then for the sake of time, I'm going to speed through this, but I'm just erasing some of the areas around my face. It looks like some of the background there didn't get removed initially, so I'll use the eraser to quickly touch up those areas. And there we go. Next, I'm going to show you a cool trick that you can do with the Generative Fill. So I took this photo with my right hand, and due to this, my shoulder was cut off. Normally, I wouldn't be able to use this photo for my thumbnail due to that. Or it would take me a great deal of time to edit it and fill it out so that it looked like my other arm. But now with Generative Fill, you can quickly fill out areas that are missing in your photo. The AI will scan the image and add what it thinks would best fit within the photo. It's truly amazing and saves me a ton of time. Plus, it's super easy to use. So first, you'll want to access your marquee tool. Remember, you can click M on your keyboard for the shortcut to quickly access it. Then just like the watermark from earlier, use the marquee tool to select the area that you want to use the generative fill in, and I'll select right around my shoulder. Then within the toolbar, click the generative fill button and leave the text box empty this time and click the generate button. You'll see the progress bar as the AI does its thing. Again, usually takes just a few seconds, but I'll speed through it to save us some time. And wow, that is really weird. You'll see that as you start using this tool, the AI doesn't always get it right, but that's why it gives you different variations to choose from. You can also regenerate the area to get more variations if none of them meet your standards. But let's take a look at these three really quick. So the first one's just weird. The second one is okay. And I think I like the third one the best. So let's stick with that one. How cool is that? The AI scanned the image and knew to try and fill out an arm with a white cotton shirt. This would have taken me close to an hour or so to do. I'm not a designer, so the fact that I can do this in a few seconds is truly amazing, and it saved me a ton of time and effort. I love it. Then if you recall, when you use the generative fill feature, it adds a new and separate layer to the image. So what this did was essentially add a new layer with an image of my shoulder. So what I like to do, and this is my personal preference and workflow, you may do something different, but I like to combine the generative fill layer with the initial layer of the image of myself. This makes it easier when I'm editing the image later on. So to combine or merge these layers, within your layer panel, make sure you have the first layer selected that you want to merge with, and we do. I'm combining this generative layer 2 layer with the iPhone image layer directly below it, so I'll make sure that I have the generative layer 2 selected first. Then on your keyboard, I'm on a Mac, so I'm pressing and holding the Command key while clicking the additional layer. If you're on a PC, I believe you click and hold the Control key to get this done. Then to merge the two and make them one layer, simply click Command E on your keyboard or Control E if you're on a PC, and we now have one layer, which will make it easier to edit later on in the video. Then I'm actually going to do the same thing for the background image and the generative fill that covered that watermark, so let me combine these layers really quick, and there we go. Now, I would normally rename these layers in order to help me stay organized. For some reason, I didn't do that in this tutorial. I apologize about that, but instead of generative layer 1 and 2, I recommend renaming these layers something like background and bin image. You just double click on the name of the layer, and this will allow you to edit their titles. Okay, the next thing I want to do is begin to touch up and restore the image of myself. As I mentioned earlier, I quickly shot this with the rear-facing camera on my cell phone, so it's not the best quality photo, and there are some edits I'd like to make in order to help it look more professional. So first, when we created the generative fill layer of my right arm, the AI not only filled out my shirt, but it also added to that background. If we remove the initial background layer by clicking this eyeball icon next to that layer in the layer panel, this will remove the background, and you can see that there's some additional background that was added due to the generative fill layer of my shoulder. Now I want to remove this because it will affect things like shadowing and color grading that we're going to do a little later on in this tutorial. So let's remove it. And thankfully we have the remove background tool. So make sure you have the correct layer selected, and then below the image, click the remove background button. And perfect. It did a much better job of removing the entire background from this layer. Looks really clean. Okay, next let's start touching up this image to make it look a little better. So let me re-add the background really quick so that we could see what the image of me looks like against it. There we go. Then next I want to resize the image and make it a little bigger. And you can easily do that with the transform tool within the toolbar. Just click this little icon, and you'll see the border appear around the image where you can drag the corners and adjust the size. Then I want to reposition the image and move it to the left side of the thumbnail. So keeping that transform tool on, simply click on the image and drag and drop it wherever you want it located. And I like that. Now we may move it around again a little later on, but this works for now. Okay, moving on. Next, let me show you some tips on how to use AI and Photoshop Beta's new filters to do some amazing facial touch-ups to this image. In this portion of the tutorial, we're going to leverage AI and some of Photoshop's new filters to clean this facial image up and make it much more professional. As you know, I shot this photo on my iPhone, and at the time I wasn't really using great lighting, and I had just woken up, so I wasn't feeling very fresh and at my best, as you'll see in my bloodshot eyes in a few moments. But thankfully, we have some great new tools at our disposal that not only speed up this process, but it makes it so that even someone like me with limited graphic design experience can enhance images and make them professional grade in a matter of minutes. Okay, so first things first, I want to whiten my eyes a bit. If we zoom into the image, and I'm on my Mac, so I'm pressing Command plus to zoom in, you'll see that I look pretty tired. This is what working long nights, having 2 kids under the age of 8, and not having my coffee yet looks like. But like I said, thankfully we have some amazing new tools in Photoshop Beta that can fix that. So there are actually a few ways you can go about this. The first is with the new Remove tool. This replaces areas of your image with realistic and relevant content. You can use this tool to remove any distracting regions or elements, no matter how small or large. Simply brush this AI-powered tool over objects and people to make them disappear as if they were never there. And I want to remove my bloodshot eyes. Man, I need some eye drops, but either way, this is a great way to quickly whiten eyes. So let's access the Remove tool in the toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen. You could press J on your keyboard, but you may also need to right-click on this little icon in order to select the Remove tool from the Healing Brushes list. Then depending on what you're trying to remove, you may need to adjust the brush size, which you could do here towards the top of the screen. It's currently set to 4, which is pretty small, but this works since we'll be removing some smaller portions of my eye. And then it's pretty straightforward. Just use the brush as you would if you were painting and select the area you want to remove. Then when you're done, lift up on the mouse and the AI will go to work, and in a few quick seconds, boom, the majority of the red was removed and filled with white, making me look much more rested. Now, you could keep working on this eye with the Remove tool, but for the sake of time, let's do the other eye. So just follow the same steps as before and paint the area that you want to remove. Then the AI goes to work, and in a few quick seconds, my eyes have been restored, and the Remove tool has basically given me some digital eye drops to remove the redness. As you can see, if we focus in on my eye whites, and I undo and redo the edits, you can see how drastically the Remove tool changed my eyes. Here's rested, not rested, rested, not rested, back to rested. How cool is that? But we're not done. I want to show you yet another AI tip that can help whiten eyes. Okay, even though this looks great and I could clean them up even more with the Remove tool, let me show you how you can use Generative Fill to whiten your eyes as well. So let me undo these changes really quick and go back to my super tired, bloodshot looking eyes. Then this time, let's use Generative Fill to fix the whites of my eyes. And instead of the Marquee tool, you can also use the Lasso tool since the area that we're going to be fixing is much more specific. So within the toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen, select the Lasso tool, and you can click L on your keyboard for the shortcut. Then all you'll do is draw and outline the area that you want to fill. So within my first eye, I'll do my best to outline the entire white of this eye like so. Then just like before, click the Generative Fill button. But this time in the text box, I'm going to describe what I want the AI to create. So I'll type whiten eyes and click the Generate button. And then let's see what the AI comes up with. Again, this processing usually takes a few seconds, but let me speed it up to save us some time. And there we go. We have our new Generative Fill layer with the 3 variations of the eye whites to choose from. Now the first option isn't bad, but let's review each one to see what they look like. So I'll click this little arrow in the toolbar, and the next variation still has some red in it, so let's check out the third one. And look at that, I really like that one. Awesome, this is so cool. Okay, let's do the same thing to the other eye. So with the Lasso tool, I'll trace where I want the AI to whiten. Then I'm going to go through these steps quickly, but they're the exact same as before. I'll click the Generative Fill button and write out my descriptive text. And click the Generate button. And in a few seconds, we'll have 3 new variations for this eye. Now, taking a closer look at these options, they aren't really what I was looking for. So you can always regenerate 3 more variations by clicking the Generate button again. and the AI will do its thing and give you 3 additional options to choose from. As you can see, we now have 6 variations within the generative fill layer, giving us even more control over what to use for this particular image. And the first option looks really good, but let's go through them really quick to see what looks best. And not too bad, but I think I'm gonna go with the first option. Then let's zoom out really quick and take a look from a different angle. Yeah, that's really good. That's amazing. And as you get used to this AI generative fill, you'll begin to do some pretty amazing things with it. And I know I sound like a broken record, but this is saving me a ton of time and effort. Seriously, if you go on YouTube and search for how to whiten eyes in Photoshop, you'll get some tutorials that are like 20 minutes long, and everyone has different techniques that are usually multiple and complicated steps to master. However, now with generative fill, you can simply tell the AI that you want white eyes, and boom, your eyes are rested, restored, and they look great. Love it. Okay, moving on. Next, let's touch up my face and quote unquote fix some of my blemishes. Now, I don't want to come across as vain or anything, but unfortunately, having a clear, smooth, and well-lit face typically converts better in terms of clicks. And since I don't wear makeup, I can leverage AI to essentially give me a digital makeover and fix some of these blemishes. So feel free to follow along with these tips and use them as you see fit when you're touching up your thumbnails. Okay, the first AI tool I'll use is the Remove brush. Again, you can access it here within the toolbar, but you can also just click J on your keyboard for the shortcut. I'm keeping the brush size relatively small, but you can change the size of it here if you'd like. Then the steps are the same as with the eye whites. Just draw over the areas that you want to remove and let the AI do its thing. Now, as you can see, it's pretty good at recognizing what you're trying to remove and blends in really well with the rest of the original image. And all I'm doing here is removing some small spots and moles from my face, which in hindsight probably won't be very visible to most people when they view the thumbnail, but it's good practice to see what the AI can do, and it does ultimately improve the overall quality of the image. So I still recommend using this brush for touching up blemishes. Okay, the next touch-up tip is to use the patch tool. And this is also in the healing brush section of the toolbar, which is the same section of brushes that the remove tool is in. And to access the patch tool, right-click on the remove tool icon within the toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen, and a menu will appear where you'll select the patch tool. It'll look like this. Then I'm going to use this to remove the bags under my eye. Again, I'm a father of 2 little ones, so don't judge. I haven't slept in years. Okay, so the way you'll use this tool is similar to the lasso tool. You'll trace the area that you want to edit, then click on that area and drag it to another portion close to the initial area that you're editing. And you'll want to look for an area that covers the bag under the eye, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Once you find an area to replace the blemish, Photoshop synthesizes nearby content to seamlessly blend it with the surrounding content. And check that out. Looks much better, and again, I'm starting to look like I actually got 8 hours of sleep the night before. Okay, so feel free to keep using the patch tool for other blemishes and whatnot, but for the sake of time, we're gonna move on. Okay, next, let's explore Photoshop's neurofilters to smoothen the facial features. And if you're new to neurofilters, it's basically a new workspace in Photoshop with a library of filters that dramatically reduces difficult workflows to just a few clicks using machine learning powered by Adobe Sensei. And this tool empowers you to try non-destructive generative filters and explore creative ideas in seconds. It also helps you improve your images by generating new contextual pixels that are not actually present in your original image, as you'll see in a few moments when we use the filter to make my old face look a few years younger. Okay, so to access the neurofilters, navigate to Filters and find the neurofilters. And this will open the neurofilters panel where you can find all of the filters, whether featured or beta, in one place. Now, I've already downloaded a few, but if this is your first time here, you'll need to download the filters you want to use, and any filter that shows a cloud icon next to it will need to be downloaded from the cloud before you can use it for the first time. Simply click on the cloud icon to download each filter you plan to use. And for this tutorial, we'll be using the skin smoothing and JPEG artifacts removal filters. So go ahead and download those too if you haven't done so already. Once downloaded, to enable the filter, simply flip the switch next to the filter that you want to use. And for this example, I want to use the skin smoothing filter, so I'll flip that on. And just like that, the filter adds a slight blur and smoothness to my face. If you can't tell, you'll definitely see the difference when we look at the before and after in a few seconds. Okay, so after the filter has been turned on, you have the ability to adjust these sliders to create the desired effect. And feel free to play around with the blur and smoothness to see what works best for you. But I'm just going to move these up a bit. Then let me show you the difference the skin smoothness filter makes by turning it on and off. This way you could see the before and after. So here it is, obviously on, then off, then on, then off, and then on. Again, I'm not trying to be vain by any means, but the skin smoothing filter takes a few years off and it makes my complexion a little more presentable since this will be used on YouTube and possibly viewed by thousands of eyeballs. So this filter allows me to quickly touch up my iPhone image and makes it look much more professional. Okay, another filter I like to use on lower quality images is the JPEG artifacts removal. So let's flip that switch to turn it on. And this particular filter makes your image look super sharp and rid of flaws caused by compression. It also takes a few seconds to process, but whenever it's done, you'll see the difference it makes. And there we go. Now, by default, it uses the highest strength, but I feel like it causes my face to look really blown out and over photoshopped. So to reduce the strength of the filter, you can click this drop down and adjust the strength settings to low, medium, or high. And I'm going to select low for this example. And then we'll give it a few more seconds to reprocess the change. Perfect. Not too much, and I look 30 instead of a tired 42-year-old father of 2 kids under the age of 8. Okay. Now, when you're done experimenting with the neurofilters, you'll want to save your changes and click the OK button in the bottom right corner of the screen. And that's going to do it for the neurofilters. Again, feel free to experiment with them to see what works best for you and your project, but for this particular example, those are the only 2 neurofilters that I'm going to use. The next thing I like to do with my facial images is use the blur tool to smooth out the remaining spots like wrinkles and pores. And I tend to have larger pores than most, so the blur tool helps me smooth those spots out. Okay, so to access the blur tool, find that teardrop icon in the toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen. Then you could adjust the brush size and settings here if you'd like. And one thing to keep in mind is the strength of the tool. I have it set to 50% so that it doesn't just completely blur out my face. So test different strengths and brush sizes to see what works best for you. Then the idea is pretty straightforward. Simply paint over the areas that you want to blur, and the tool will help smooth things out, like wrinkles, pores, etc. And there we go. Looks good. Okay, there is one more filter I like to use on my facial images, and that's the Camera Raw filter. So, again, navigate to the filters and find Camera Raw filter. This filter allows you to use the functions of the Adobe Camera Raw interface within Photoshop. You can essentially make adjustments within this filter at any time during your workflow. Within this toolbar on the right, you can adjust things like highlights, whites, darks, and blacks, using the sliders to make quick, intuitive global contrast adjustments. Using these tools is especially useful if you're not yet fully familiar or comfortable with Photoshop's curves and level adjustments. And what I like to do with my photos is adjust the basic settings found here within this tab. This is really all I touch, but these basic settings allow me to brighten and enhance the vibrance of the image, ultimately helping it stand out from the crowd. Now, don't feel overwhelmed with all of these settings. You can always reset them to 0 if you make a mistake, but you'll just use these sliders to adjust things like the exposure, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, vibrance, etc. And I'm going to speed through this to save us some time, but I like to enhance the exposure and contrast while bringing the highlights and blacks down, but raising the shadows and whites. I also like to increase the vibrance and saturation. These tend to help my iPhone photos look well lit and enhance the colors throughout my face. And let me show you the before and after so you can get an idea of how much this filter helps. So if you click this little eyeball icon, you could turn off the filter and go back to the original image. As you can see, here's off. Then we'll turn it back on. Then off. And then back on. Hopefully you can see the difference between the two and why I like to use it for my facial images. Okay, so that's going to do it for the basic settings. Now, one other setting I use sometimes here is the color mixer located in this tab. And this gives you the ability to adjust specific color levels within your images. I'm not using it in this video, but it can be helpful for some images, so I just wanted to point that out. All right, once you've configured all of the filter settings, go ahead and click the OK button in the bottom right corner of the screen. And check that out. With the right filters and tools, I've been able to turn a somewhat basic and unlit iPhone photo into a pretty decent image. And one more quick before and after so you can get a better idea of what we did to my face. So here is the after and before, after, then before, and after. Again, hopefully you're able to see how the right filters with AI can help to enhance your images, fix lighting issues, and make them stand out. Okay, now that we're done with this image, let me merge the remaining layers. So once again, I'm on a Mac, so I'm pressing and holding the Command key while selecting the layers I want to combine. Then I'll click Command E for the shortcut, and there we go. Now this is one whole layer. The last thing I want to do is add some drop shadows to this image. This will help it pop and not look so flat and two-dimensional. So to add shadows, you'll need to add effects to the layer. So make sure you have the correct layer selected, and towards the bottom of the layers panel, click that little FX icon. Then from the effects menu, scroll down and select drop shadow. This will open your effects pop-up, and this is where you can enable, disable, and configure all of your layers' effects. For this particular image, we're only going to be adding a drop shadow, and you can configure the various aspects of the shadow structure here. Feel free to play around with these settings to see what works best for you, but I'm going to adjust these really quick, and as I do, you'll see how each one affects the shadow behind my image. It's pretty cool, and as I mentioned earlier, this shadow will help me not look so flat against the background. Another setting that you can configure here is the contour, and clicking on this little drop-down menu will open the different types of contour that you could use for your shadow. And scrolling through them, you could see that each one has a different effect on the shadow. But again, I'm going to go with the original contour of linear. Okay, I think that's going to work. I like that. Then once you're done, don't forget to click the OK button. And now that all the effects have been added to this layer, you can see them here in the layers panel where you can turn them on and off as needed with these little eyeball icons. And let me do that really quick to show you the difference. So here is on, then off, then on, then off, and back on. I always add some sort of drop shadow to my images within my YouTube thumbnails, so I highly recommend this effect for your project as well. Alright, so that's going to do it for this image. Next, let's move on and add the AI generated image of the robot to this thumbnail and use generative fill to make it stand out even more. In this portion of the tutorial, I'm going to add the AI generated image from Adobe Firefly, which was my little robot buddy in the chef's hat, but we're going to use generative fill and Photoshop Beta to enhance the image and edit it so that it's as if it's right next to me within the thumbnail. Now, you obviously don't need to follow these steps exactly because the image you generate will most likely be different than mine. However, the tips and steps we're going to cover are still relevant and could help you speed up and improve your thumbnail workflow when using these AI tools. So that being said, let me add the image of my robot really quick. So I'm going to open my Finder and find the image I want to use. And there it is. Now we'll obviously adjust the size, but the first thing I always like to do is remove the background. But as you'll see, the tool isn't always perfect. For example, when I click the Remove Background button for this particular image, whoops, it's removing more than I'd like. And there are some spots that removed that I'd like to actually keep in the image, like the desk. So I'll need to undo this edit by clicking Command Z on my keyboard, and then I'll actually use my eraser tool and manually erase the background. You can access the eraser tool here in the toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen, or click E on your keyboard for the shortcut. Now, this is somewhat tedious, and I know that it's not ideal, but there will be times where you'll need to make manual edits and do things if you want them to look good. So let me speed through this really quick as I erase the background and smooth out the edges. Again, I'm just using the eraser and the lasso tool at times to cut out some areas, but once I'm done, the background will be gone, and we can begin to edit the image and make it blend with the rest of the thumbnail. I should also point out that you can always regenerate this image in Adobe Firefly so that the background doesn't have as much going on. Maybe edit your prompt to have a more plain background so that the Remove Background feature in Photoshop has an easier time removing the background of the image. But either way, I think that that's going to do it. Then we obviously want to resize this image and shrink it down. So select the transform icon in the toolbar below the image and drag the corners to resize it. Then I'm going to move this guy so that he sits in the right-hand corner of the thumbnail. And then it looks like I missed some areas of the background, so let me erase them really quick to clean it up a bit. And I'm just using the eraser tool again to smooth out some of the edges and remove some areas that don't really mesh well. And this is all personal preference and will really depend on what your vision is for your thumbnail, but I want the main focus to be the robot and I want to have a transparent background. So that's why I'm taking so much time with this particular image. And there we go, looks good. Okay, next we're gonna use AI to fix the chef's hat. The original generation of the image cut it off at the top of the screen, making it look kind of flat, but we can use generative fill to fix that and make it look more full and complete. So just like the whites of my eyes, I'm gonna use the lasso tool. So let's select that really quick. And I'm just gonna draw the area I want the AI to fill out, which will be right above the hat, like so. Then from here, click the generative fill button, and then the generate button, and the AI goes to work. And within a few seconds, we'll have 3 new variations to choose from. And there we go. So let's take a look at each one to see which one works best. So the first one isn't bad. The second one is great. And the third one's okay. But I think I like the second one the best. Yeah, we'll stick with that one. Looks the most complete. Okay, next, I want to get really creative and make it so that this little robot is pointing up in the air with its left arm. Now, I could have probably done this in my initial prompt when we created the image in Adobe Firefly, but I want to show you the power of Photoshop Beta's Generative Fill. So first things first, let's make sure we have the correct layer selected. Then I'm going to use the lasso tool again, and I'll draw where I want the arm to be. So with the lasso tool, I'm going to trace the general area and shape of what I want the arm to look like. So I want it to be pointing up towards the sky. There we go, I think that's gonna work. Next, click the Generative Fill button. And this time, I'm going to explain what I want the AI to generate, which is a robot arm pointing up. Then click the Generate button. And we'll wait a few seconds for the magic to happen. I'll speed through this really quick. And boom, how cool is that? Man, this never gets old. Okay, so let's take a look at what the AI came up with. Not bad, but I think I want to see what else it has up its sleeve, no pun intended. So I'll generate a few more options by clicking the Generate button again, and the AI will regenerate 3 additional variations of this arm. And while it's processing, I'm just going to speed through it again to save us some time. And let's check them out really quick. And this one looks like he's given the peace sign, but they're still all really amazing. This is just so cool that we could do this with a few clicks of the mouse. And I think I like this one the best. It seems to mesh well with the rest of the robot. Okay, now that we have the arm, next we'll need to erase the original arm. So make sure you have that layer selected. And then I'm just going to use the eraser tool to erase that arm. And let me speed through this really quick. Then it looks like there was a little bit of the original arm that was added to the generative fill layer. So let me select that layer and then clean up the edges with my eraser. Perfect. Now, I hope I'm not the only one who thinks this is super cool. What would have taken me hours to create took me a few minutes and a little dexterity with the eraser tool. I love it. Okay, before we move on, I want to merge these layers of the robot. Remember, this will help when adding drop shadows and effects to the image if it's just one layer. So let's do that really quick. And remember, it's Command J on the keyboard to merge them as one. Next, I want to add a drop shadow to the robot. So just like we did with the image of myself, make sure you have the correct layer selected and then click the FX icon below the Layers panel. Then select Drop Shadow. And make your edits as you see fit within the structure settings. But for this example, I'm just going to leave everything as is. Then I want to add an outer glow effect to this robot. So within the effects pop-up, check that box that says outer glow and click on it to open the effect settings. And then from here, the only thing I really change is the size within the element settings. This just gives them a little glow and helps the image pop. Okay, I like that. So go ahead and click the OK button when you're done making your edits. And our little robot buddy is complete, and we're done with our image edits. Now, I'm still going to play around with their positions and resize them a bit to fit the text, but we'll do that a little later after we add the text to the thumbnail. So with that being said, let's move on and add the text to this YouTube thumbnail. Now that we've added and designed our images within the thumbnail, it's time to add the text. This is probably one of the most important steps because your thumbnail's text can provide additional context or highlight key points that may not be clearly conveyed through the image alone. A well-designed thumbnail with engaging text can significantly increase your video's CTR, and this can potentially lead to more views, likes, and comments. Plus, with the help of Photoshop's text, we can make your thumbnail stand out among all the others, which in turn can draw the viewer's eye and make them more likely to click on your video. And if you recall, this is a thumbnail for a tutorial on how to start a food blog with AI. And this is what our text will look like in a few minutes. And before I show you how to create this text, I want to go over 3 quick tips for when you're creating your thumbnail's text and styles. First, when you're deciding on what text to add to your thumbnail, make sure your text is easy to read. Use large, bold font that contrasts well with the background. Also, try to keep your text short and to the point. The aim is to deliver a message quickly, as viewers are often scanning through multiple thumbnails. Finally, use text effects like shadows, outlines, or gradient fills to make your text more visually appealing and help it stand out against the background. So, with that being said, let's add our text to this thumbnail. Okay, the first thing you'll want to do is select the text tool. It'll be a T icon. You can also press T on your keyboard for the shortcut to access it. Then click anywhere on your image where you want the text to be placed. This will create a text box. And don't worry, you can move the text box anywhere on the thumbnail. It's not stuck where you initially place it, just FYI. Now, I currently have it set to use a Zing Rust demo font, but you can change the font, size, color, and other style settings here in this little toolbar below the text box or within the property tabs on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay, let's add our text. So I'm going to have this say, start a food blog with AI, but I'm going to use a few different text layers to do so. This will give me more freedom of the location and placement of the text and its effects. So to edit the text, highlight it and type what you want it to say. And this first layer will just say start A. Then it's currently set to 12 points. You can change the measurement to pixels in the Photoshop preferences, but I'm just going to keep the measurements as is for the sake of time, but I will enlarge the text. So to do that, you'll want to highlight the text first, then in the text size dropdown within the toolbar below the text box, I'm going to swap out 12 points for 30. And there we go. Then I'm going to move this text, so make sure you have the Move tool selected. You can press V on the keyboard for the shortcut, and this allows me to drag and drop the text box anywhere on the thumbnail. And for this particular thumbnail, I want the text to be in between the 2 main images. And there we go. That'll do for now. I'm definitely going to realign everything in a few moments, but this is a good start. Okay, next I'm going to add some effects to the text. Remember, adding text effects like shadows, outlines, or gradient fills will make your text more visually appealing and help it stand out against the background. So just like our image layers, make sure you have the text layer selected and then click the FX icon towards the bottom of the layer panel and select Drop Shadow. And feel free to play around with the structure settings of the drop shadow effect, but for the text right now, I'm going to leave everything as is. I like how this looks. Next, I'm also going to add a stroke effect to this text. This will add an outline around the text and is a popular effect you see on some thumbnails because it adds another style to the text, helping it stand out. So, select the stroke effect in this pop-up menu. And from here, you can configure the size and color of the stroke outline. It's pretty big at the moment, but you can edit the size with this little slider. And let me do that right now. And I'll decrease it a bit. And there we go. I like that. The next effect I like to add to my text is the bevel and emboss. So let's select that one. This helps the text pop and makes it kind of look like one of those puffy stickers that you used to get as a kid. Now, we'll obviously need to configure the structure, so the settings I like to use are Style, Emboss, Technique, Smooth, Depth at 100%, Direction up, Soften 0, and then the size is the only thing I changed. So you can adjust this little slider or just manually enter the pixel size, which I'm gonna do, and I'll change it from 68 to 7. Okay, I pretty much leave everything else alone, but you can play around with the gloss contour by clicking this little drop-down menu. And as you cycle through the different options, you can see how it affects the overall look and feel of the text. Now, some of them look pretty bad, but you can experiment with different gloss contours to see what works best for you. However, I like the initial linear setting, so I'll go back to that one. And there we go. All right, that's going to do it for this text. So go ahead and click the OK button. And our new effects have been added to the text layer, which you can see and manage here within the Layers panel. Then I'm actually going to copy and paste this text layer to create the next line of the headline. So make sure you have that layer selected, and then I'm on a Mac, so I'm pressing Command-C on my keyboard to copy it, and then Command-P to paste it. And there we go. We have an identical text layer, but more importantly, all of the effects have been transferred over as well. So that'll save us some time, and all we have to do is change what this says. So this particular text layer will say food blog. And then I'll situate it so that it's aligned properly with our other text layer. And now I'm going to move the images around a bit to make sure they aren't completely covering the text. And I'll resize the robot image a bit to help give that perspective of it being behind me, also so that it isn't completely covering the headline. And there we go, I like that. All right, we're almost done. So my next line of text is going to say with, so I'll copy and paste the text layer again and type what I want it to say. But this will be substantially smaller, so I'll reduce the size of the text in that little toolbar. And then let's situate this so that it's centered with the rest of the text. Perfect. And then last one. So I'm going to copy and paste this text layer again, and then this will say AI. But for this layer, I'm going to change the size as well as the type of font and its color so that it's larger and so that it stands out. So to change the font, you can do so within the toolbar below the text or within the Properties tab with the character dropdown. It's currently set to Zing Rust Demo, but I'm going to change it to Gil Sans Bold Italic. So I'll click this little dropdown within the toolbar and find the specific text that I want to use. And there it is. Then I'll need to move some things around to ensure that everything is aligned and looks cohesive. So let me do that really quick. And there we go, that'll work. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do with the AI layer of text is change the color and use a gradient overlay. This will help the text stand out from the rest, plus it's a cool effect to use on your text. So let's select the layer and then double click on the effects within the layer panel. And this will open the effects pop-up. And from here, enable the gradient overlay effect by checking that box. And then within the settings, click the gradient color picker. And this will open another pop-up where you can edit the gradient and really get specific with the colors used. For example, if you click on these little color swatches under the color bar, you can distinguish the exact color used and where the blending starts. I'm using an orange that fades to a yellow, but this is where you can change the gradient colors, and feel free to play around and see what looks best in your text. Then the last thing I'm going to do to this text layer is I'm going to change the color of the stroke. So let's open that effect. And then click this little color swatch. And this will open a color picker tool where you can set the color outline to whatever you want. And I want it to be white. Awesome. Looks great. Okay, that's going to do it for our text, so don't forget to click the OK button to close everything out and save these changes. And we're almost done. There's one more thing I'm going to do with this thumbnail. So I really love the background colors and how it flows like fabric in the wind, but my robot kind of has the same shade of blue in it as the background. And I want to see what it would look like if the robot was sitting against the purplish pink color background instead. So the way to achieve that is to flip our background horizontally. So make sure you have the background layer selected, and then open the transform feature by clicking this little square icon in the toolbar. Then right click anywhere on the background layer, and from the menu select flip horizontally, and boom, much better. I really like how that turned out, looks great. Okay, let me do some final placement adjustments really quick. And then now that I'm looking at this thumbnail zoomed out, There is some space above where the robot is pointing. This could be an opportunity to add another image to help illustrate what is in our video. And the one way to do that is with a logo. So for this particular video tutorial, I'm teaching people how to use AI specifically with ChatGPT to help with starting their food blog. So what if I added a ChatGPT logo to this thumbnail? So let me do that really quick. And one argument to this could be that having too much going on in your thumbnail may look cluttered and it might push potential viewers away, but let's just play around and see what this looks like. Plus, since this is a layer, you can easily remove it and not use it if you see that it affects your clicks. But I actually like it, so let's keep it. Okay, that's going to do it for this tutorial. Hopefully you found it helpful and you can now create attention-grabbing thumbnails that will help your video stand out and attract more viewers. Remember, practice is key. The more you work with these tools, the more comfortable you'll become and the better your thumbnails will look. So don't be afraid to experiment with different styles and techniques until you find what works best for your content. If you have any questions or want to see more content like this, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. I'm always happy to help out. And if you enjoyed this thumbnail and found it valuable, I'd greatly appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up and share it with others who you think may benefit from it. Either way, thanks again for watching and have fun creating with AI. So that's going to do it for this video. If you found it helpful, I'd greatly appreciate it if you would like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Blog with Ben YouTube channel. Also, if you're thinking about starting a blog, you gotta check out my step-by-step tutorials. They'll show you everything you need to know in order to build, grow, and monetize a professional WordPress blog. And as always, your support means a great deal to me and my family, and for that, I thank you. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.